Well, I think the first thing to consider, and if you go to the question of if they're considering adding the cat, which is a little bit of a different question than if they've already added it. So let's go to the considering adding a cat to a household where maybe they have a dog that has a known propensity for predatory aggression. And I think the owners really have to think very carefully about, is that the wisest decision for their household? Now, it's not to say that it might not end up working out, but they're taking on a project, and most owners really don't want to do that or have maybe the time to deal with that project effectively. So, and it's not just really the safety of the cat, even though that's paramount. I obviously would never want a cat hurt, but it's also the welfare of the cat. So even if the cat is not bleeding, that cat may actually not have a very good life if it's got a terrier at its tail all the time, even if it, once again, is not really physically injured. It could be emotionally injured. So once again, in a case where I have a known history of a very kind of aggressive, predatory aggression in a dog, I may really think hard and wise if a cat is the right choice for that household. Now, there is a difference sometimes between how dogs respond to unknown cats or cats outside versus how they respond to cats inside. And that owner may not know that about their dog because they may not have had a dog with that, or a cat with that particular dog. However, once again, high propensity for chasing outside, some of that may come over, and I would be counseling them about, is this the right choice? And part of that choice is if they say, well, we're going to take that little bit of risk and it may work out well, then we're kind of also answering your question about what if they've already gotten the cat and they have this dog that's now chasing the cat around, what can you do there? And so the things I would prepare them to think about are that they probably will need to do some type of immediate environmental modification so that that cat is not at risk. Cats trump the dog in this case. I'm going to do everything to keep that cat safe because it is the one that is vulnerable. And so they may need to look at segregation within the house, which owners are reluctant oftentimes to do at first, but when they actually do it, it's usually not as traumatic to everyone. And once again, sometimes everyone enjoys it, the relaxation. They're like, wow, I wish I'd done this earlier. And so they also may not need to do full segregation, but just do enrichment so that cat has lots of opportunities to be safely away from the dog. So elevated perches, feeding, up high, giving it maybe just a cat room that it can go to, the dog can't access, the cat can jump over the barrier. Once again, environmental changes that the owners have to make, and it takes some effort to do that. If I have a scenario where the environmental changes alone are still not keeping that cat safe, and that cat's already in the home, we can look at behavior modification for the dog. There are strategies for that to actually try to counter condition them. But if they're not willing to do the management part in the meantime to keep everyone safe, then I think we have to look at other alternatives for that cat to keep it safe. Once again, not just physically, but emotionally safe for the household. For that behavior modification component, with the cases that we see a problem with and we'd like to work on, once again, cat safety has to be paramount. So we're going to have the dog somehow either contained or restrained so the cat can't be hurt. And things that, it'll depend upon the severity of the case, but things that I may consider employing are things like a leash and a harness, maybe a gentle leader or a head collar, so that they can't actually, it gives you great owner control, so they can't actually go after, and you can redirect the dog away if it does start to go after the cat. I certainly would, if the dog is biting, I certainly would consider a basket muzzle for safety. And so even though it doesn't prevent the trauma of the chase, if you will, from the cat's perspective, at least they are not getting teeth contacting skin. And then I'll consider things like crates and baby gates and so forth. Now in a session, if you will, so if I decide I'm going to pursue this, I have a dog that's really a little too, chasing my cat, I'm going to say management, let's put them in separate living quarters, and then every day, let's work on this process in a very controlled way. So I'll put whatever level of barriers I have to have in place, and it'll depend upon the severity if I have the dog in a crate, or whether I have it on a leash and a harness with a basket muzzle. All those things will be case dependent. But I'll make sure the cat is safe. And then what I'll try to do is introduce the cat in a way that is not going to precipitate kind of the chase scenario. And of course, what cats do very well, which makes these little dogs just wild, is they run. And so that really triggers sometimes that predatory response. So I'll do something for the cat, whether they're in a carrier or if it's safe and I can hold them and they're not too frantic and going to scratch the owner, I'll say, okay, let's keep that cat far enough away so it doesn't feel compelled to leave, and or maybe add a carrier in there. What I don't want to do to the cat, though, is say, okay, we'll put you in a carrier right in front of the dog and let the dog go crazy at you, because that's not fair to the cat. So we have something in place there, and then we say, okay, maybe use a distance gradient. The dog, the cat are far away from each other. We use our largest room in the house, perhaps. And what we do is we bring the dog in or have it behind some type of restraint. And then what we try to do is pair the exposure to the cat. If we tell the dog what we'd like it to do, so instead of chasing and terrorizing, we say, can you sit, maybe watch me, and have some commands that the dog's able to do, and then reward it for desirable behavior in the presence of the cat. We gradually then, over time and sessions, will increase the intensity of the exposure. We may move the cat closer to the dog. We may have the cat start to move around, maybe play with it so it kind of starts to move a little bit. And hopefully at that point, if you've done this gradually enough, the dog is able to handle that, will do the command you ask it to do, not be inclined to chase the cat, and you can reward the dog at that point. And until we get to the point where the dog's essentially kind of ignoring the cat or saying, hey cat, come over here, because then I'm going to look at my owners and do a command to be able to get treats. So that's kind of the plan. Now, obviously there's lots of speed bumps along the way. One day your dog may be more reactive. It may have nothing to do with what the cat did, but maybe the mailman just came and the dog had gotten all excited about the mailman, and then you do a training session, the dog's already excited, and because of that, it's more reactive to the cat than it was at the last training session. So if you have a scenario where you're working and the dog's not responding to your commands and it's trying to pull and chase after the cat, you're okay because you have your safety measure in place, you have the leash or what have you, so the cat's not going to be terrorized. But you may have to at that point say, we're going to take a break. So no punishment. I'm not going to hit the dog or yell at the dog, which will increase arousal. I'm not going to do that, but I'm not going to reward it. And I'm going to say, okay, we'll just take a break, and then we're going to try to, when we reconvene, when the dog's calmer, we're going to not make it as difficult for the dog. We're going to make the cat further away again or do something to kind of calm the situation down. So once again, it's an involved process, and if owners don't want a project, they probably may make a decision about not adopting that cat, but it certainly can be done successfully and have a good household, a canine and feline harmony.